Welcome back, Locked On Baylor. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. One of the big, buzz tweets of the week, if you will, the Field of 68, the top 10 current head coaches in college basketball. Number one, Dan Hurley. No surprise there. Back-to-back national championships while still early in his big-time coaching career. Very good. Number two, Bill Self. Sure, yeah. Pretty great. Great winning percentage. A couple national championship rings. Number three is Mark Few, followed closely at number four by Scott Drew. This divided people. This divided the great people of the 2021 national championship game. Good friends, Mark Few and Scott Drew, both have had terrific programs. Obviously, Mark Few has had it for a little bit longer than Scott. A little bit of a different circumstance, I would say. But this got Baylor people ablaze of whether Mark Few is a better coach than Scott Drew. And to be honest, it's a bit of a toss-up. Okay, I love Scott Drew. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. As well he should be. And I think he's got more Final Fours and hopefully some more national championships in his future. The way this Baylor program is going, I firmly believe that. What Mark Few has done at Gonzaga is also one of the great stories in the history of college basketball. When he got there, they were nothing. They were nothing. They were a podunk little school in a nothing city in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, it did not have the allure of some of the small parochial schools of the East Coast when it comes to basketball. They didn't have that. And he turned them into a power at the national level. Been there 25 years, couple Final Fours, couple national championship game appearances, and one of the best records, I think, in college basketball right now. It's been either 6 or 7 straight years that they have made the Sweet 16. I love that for Baylor right now. But the thing I love even more is the fact that Baylor has a national championship banner hanging at the Foster Pavilion. One that was against the Gonzaga Bulldogs. One that Scott Drew got the upper hand against Mark Few. And you look at Scott Drew's resume. Sure, only one Final Four, only one national championship, I say ironically. But also one of the great rebuilds in the history of college sports. As we know, it's a different kind of tracker. You know, Mark Few got the winning pretty quickly. Scott Drew didn't even have that luxury with how big a rebuild it was. So you look at these two guys, they're both Hall of Famers, both so well respected. But who is the better coach? That depends on your mindset. Okay? You can either say, I want the consistent deep tournament runs for a guy whose career is not over yet, by the way, who could still yet win national championships in Mark Few. Or I've got a guy who's made a couple deep runs, and he's also got that ring. He's got that national championship banner. They can't take that away from him. Depends on what side of the aisle you're on. And what I find very interesting about this is not the 3 and 4 slots, but that the 5 slot is Kelvin Sampson. A lot of respect for Kelvin, right? And he's done a great thing with this Houston program. He did some great work at Oklahoma. In fact, I would go as far as saying his resume is fairly close to Mark Few's. And if you're doing the 2 lines of thinking that I just laid out, Kelvin Sampson would be on the side of Mark Few. He's not won a national championship. So either those guys are better than Scott Drew, who does have a championship, or they're not. So what I'm trying to say is you either put both of them ahead of Scott Drew, or you put both of them behind Scott Drew. That's at least my line of thinking. What would I rather have as a fan? I'd rather have the national championship. I'd rather have that night in April. I'd rather have that banner raising ceremony. I'd rather have that one shining moment music video with my school at the end. I would rather have the parade. I would rather have my national championship t-shirt, hat, hoodie, sweatshirt, quarter zip. I'd rather have all of that than to say I've been to more Final Fours, personally. But trust me, I do get the other argument. And the biggest part of all of that is Gonzaga ain't going anywhere. In fact, they didn't even have a great year by Gonzaga standards this past year, but they made a run late in the regular season, and they kicked the crap out of Kansas, the number 2 coach, by the way. So I get that. I get that line of thought. But me, personally, I'm taking the national championship. Maybe that is just me. And one other thing I found interesting about this is there was literally like a 12-month span between April 21 and April 22 that you could have made a real argument for Scott Drew to be ahead of Bill Self. And that was the last year of Mike Krzyzewski. So if Bill Self doesn't win that national championship in 22, you could be making an argument for Scott Drew as the best active coach in college basketball. Because he did more with less, whereas Bill Self did less with more. But once Bill Self wins the second one, it's tough to argue. His winning percentage is off the charts. Obviously, there are things that are inherently, how do I word this? There are advantages that Bill Self has had and will probably always have that Scott Drew does not. Scott Drew comes in one of the biggest scandals in the history of the sport. Bill Self comes in, inherits a team that went to the national championship game the year before, and wears Kansas across their chest. The easiest recruiting pitch, maybe in college basketball. Yeah, you know me? We're Kansas. We have the most wins of like anybody ever. Yes, the Jayhawks, Allen Fieldhouse, the national championships, all of that. Scott Drew didn't have that, and he still took it to the mountaintop. And it's been a tete-a-tete with Bill Self the last 5-6 years in this conference. It's been the best conference in America, and those have been the 2 best teams. But that's all for naught. Bill Self deserves his spot on the list. Just in case you're curious about the rest of them. I just lost it. Cam. Okay, Kelvin Sampson 5, Nate Oates 6, Matt Painter 7, Bruce Pearl 8, Rick Pitino 9, and Tom Izzo 10. More arguments I'd have for that. We don't really have the time, but if we're going off full body of work, Pitino should be much higher, and John Calipari should be on this list. And if we're going off recency, okay, then Tom Izzo probably shouldn't be on this list. Neither should Rick Pitino. Both of them have lost their fastball. Anyway, hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. We really appreciate that. And if you want to keep up to date on all the Baylor sports news, be sure to give us a like and ring the notification bell, because we are your first listen today and every day. We are your exclusive home for nothing but Baylor sports content 5 days a week that's not coming straight from the university. Be sure to follow us here on YouTube and also wherever you get your podcasts, and on Twitter as well at Locked On Baylor. Thanks so much again. Have a good one, and sick 'em.